Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast. This is your host Deepak Rana, and this week I'm going to discuss some wonderful books on nature, and we'll explore the idea of nature philosophically, scientifically, even spiritually. And I hope you're really going to enjoy this. And the first book that I've got with me today, it's called The Revolutionary Genius of Plants, written by Stefano Mancuso. And the book really talks about this new understanding of the intelligence in plants and how they behave. Because a lot of times I feel we don't really think about how plants are functioning, how their intelligence is working. In fact, intelligence is one word that we don't really associate with plants, but they are intelligent. Because when you think about what intelligence really is, it is the ability to learn. So when you see living things and you see they are capable of learning from their experiences and then they adjust. And that's pretty much what plants did almost around 400 million or 1 billion years ago. Between this period, uh, unlike animals which had to move around to find the food, plants took a different step in terms of their evolution. They remained in one place and they tried to get all their energy from the sun and adapting their bodies to resist really the predators and somehow finding ways to survive, which was obviously not an easy task. But that's what they have done. They have evolved in unique and unusual ways, and they have developed solutions to all these kind of problems. And in fact, when you compare them with animals, they have got quite the opposite solutions as a part of their survival strategy. Like animals move, plants do not move. Animals are fast, plants are really slow. Animals consume, plants produce. Animals make CO2, plants make CO2. But perhaps the most important difference, it's the difference is about the concentration and diffusion. Let me explain what that means. Any function that in animals is concentrated or you know is pretty much there in a specialized organ. When it comes to plants, it's diffused or spread out throughout their body of the plants. And this is the fundamental difference. And because of that, plants appear so different to us. Like you consider every organ vital to us. We use hands for a particular purpose, we use legs to walk. And plants use their entire structure to perform a particular task. And that's really the first fascinating thing the writer talks about the plants. That when we think about our intelligence, we think of brain. That's where our intelligence is. That's where our memory is stored and all the calculations that we are supposed to do, information processing, it goes on in the brain. Plants, they do not have brains. But does that mean they cannot process information or they do not have memory or for that matter do they not have intelligence? That's not true, because they don't have dedicated organs for these dedicated tasks, yet they do all of that. So what do we mean when we talk about memory in plants? Well, what they do is, if you put them through a particular kind of stress, or if you expose them to something that is detrimental to their health, they adjust over a period of time, very slowly, but they do adjust. And that's where the memory is coming from. The memory is not necessarily something, a separate organ which is storing the information, but as a whole, they are collecting that experience and slowly they are getting used to it. And the author gives a wonderful example of this plant. You might have seen it. It's called shame plant. When you touch it, the leaves automatically they get closed, and after some time they get open. So he talks about this one experiment where they expose this plant to consistent stimuli, where what you expect is the plant was going to get closed as it was getting in touch with external forces, but it slowly learned that the stimuli around was just consistent, it wasn't harmful, something was not approaching it, so it adjusted. And it's a wonderful example of how plants adjust. They have their own mechanism, their own way of remembering things, events, experiences, and accordingly they adjust. The second interesting thing which the author talks about is how plants don't have muscles like us, and yet they move. Of course, they don't move like us in the way that we walk and we shift from one place to another. They mostly stay rooted in one particular place, and yet they have their own movements. One obvious example, as I said, is that of shame plant, where it just moves, it adjusts to the external stimulus and closes its leaves. So there is definitely movement taking place. It also takes place in other different varieties of plants where they are trying to trap an insect or a different species, and of course they use their movements. And then the author talks about another interesting thing that the plants do. They adapt this mimetic behavior where we mimic other organisms. Let's say they change their color, the shape, and camouflage themselves really in order to protect themselves and ensure they go on to survive. And he talks about this plant called bocuila, which is a woody ground-rooted vine, and it grows in the forests of Chile and Argentina. And he talks about how recently, around a decade ago, the researchers discovered how one of the shrubs, one of the leaves in that plant, they looked very different. And they noticed and questioned what was going on there. So what it had done is the leaves, they had grown exactly like those different shrubs that this particular vine was climbing, its neighbors, so that it looked exactly like that, and the predators won't notice it. So it participates in that mimetic behavior. It just looks like some other plants, some other objects, and that's how it protects itself. But it does so very slowly, adjusting to the environment based on what's there in the surroundings, noticing it, observing it, then slowly adjusting itself to the surroundings. And as I said, plants work very slowly, unlike mammals or other species, the animals that move on the ground or the birds, they are very quick. Compared to that, plants, they function very slowly. Everything about them is very, very slow. But they do these things. The author also talks about the unique advantages plants have compared to us. Of course, they have so many disadvantages as well. They don't have the brain structure that we have, or the movements that humans or other animals they have. Plants do not have a face, limbs, or any really recognizable structure. But what that means is they don't have the disadvantage that their limbs would be cut off and then they will struggle to survive. That won't happen with them. The way the connected network they have within them, it also ensures that their surviving capabilities are really, really strong. In fact, so strong that when you see all life forms, most of them are plants. Most of the weight of living organisms on this earth, it comes from plants. So the key here is decentralization. Their internal decentralization of functions. They don't have a separate heart, brain, so that one organ gets damaged, the entire species, entire organism that will suffer. It doesn't work that way with them. So if a predator comes and eats the flowers or leaves or fruits, it's still going to survive. And another interesting genius of plants is so much of their network goes through roots and inside the ground, and that remains invisible to all the land animals, to the humans as well. So the chances of their survival are going to be very high, because any predator or anything that comes, they are going to, let's say, attack the parts that are visible, but they will regrow again, because the important network is inside the earth. And this decentralization is really the key to their success as a species. Then there are some really amazing things that plants do. Of course, I've said it over and over again that plants cannot move and they can be vulnerable in certain circumstances to the predators. So they have developed different mechanisms. And one of the strategies they use is the art of manipulation. They have learned to collaborate with certain animals. In fact, they have been able to manipulate some of them by offering certain rewards, by manipulating their behavior. And that's another strategy they have used to ensure their survival. So what they do is they reward their pollinators with delicious and energetic nectar. So for example, a bird comes and bird gets a delicious fruit in exchange for spreading its seeds. And even humans, probably the best carriers for the plants on this planet. And what humans do, and that in exchange for food or other uses of plants, they spread the plants everywhere. In fact, that reminds me of a passage from Yuval Harari's book Sapiens, where he talks about how it wasn't really humans that domesticated the wheat. It was the other way around, that wheat domesticated humans. Let me read that particular passage for you. Harari writes, Sapiens had been living a fairly comfortable life, hunting and gathering until about 10,000 years ago, but then began to invest more and more effort in cultivating wheat. Within a couple of millennia, humans in many parts of the world were doing little from dawn to dusk other than taking care of wheat plants. It wasn't easy. Wheat demanded a lot of them. Wheat did not like rocks and pebbles, so sapiens broke their backs clearing fields. Wheat did not like sharing its space, water, and nutrients with other plants, so men and women labored long days weeding under the scorching sun. Wheat got sick, so sapiens had to keep a watch out for worms and blight. Wheat was defenseless against other organisms that liked to eat from rabbits to locust swarms, so the farmers had to guard and protect it. Wheat was thirsty, so humans lugged water from springs and streams to water it. Its hunger even impelled sapiens to collect animal feces to nourish the ground in which wheat grew. The body of Homo sapiens had not evolved for such tasks. It was adapted to climbing apple trees and running after gazelles, not to clearing rocks and carrying water buckets. Human spines, knees, necks, and arches paid the price. Studies of ancient skeletons indicate that the transition to agriculture brought about a plethora of ailments such as slip disc, arthritis, and hernias. Moreover, the new agricultural tasks demanded so much time that people were forced to settle permanently next to their wheat fields. This completely changed their way of life. We did not domesticate wheat, it domesticated house. Rather, it domesticated us. In fact, the word domesticate comes from the Latin domus, which means house. Now ask yourself, who's the one living in a house? Not the wheat, it's the sapiens. And that's how you can see in different varieties, in different forms, plants have been able to manipulate animals and even humans, which we consider much more intelligent as species. But maybe that's not always true. So that's what you learn in this book. You learn about the genius of plants, how they have been able to survive for millions of years, how they have been able to make their way through all this time, and despite all the predators around, despite all their limitations, they've still been able to survive and really flourish in every corner of the earth. They have spread themselves and they have used other species on their behalf. They themselves cannot walk, but other species take them around and make sure they spread. So I hope when you get a chance to read the book, you'll really enjoy it. You'll learn the science behind it and the lives of plants, their actions, their behavior. It's really fascinating to read and study. So with that, I'll take your leave and I'll catch you the next time with another book on nature. Thank you very much for listening.